Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Ascending Souls podcast, number 5 this is. And we've got kind of a special episode today. We're going to be going into the music industry, and I've got a guest here with me. He's actually my granddad. But Grandad, would you like to explain who you are and what you've been doing?
Yeah, my name's Paul Burns. I originally started out life as Christopher Paul Barnes from Upper Holloway in a place called Comus Road, number 23. Um, by the age of 8, I was interested in playing music. By the age of 9, I got my first guitar. My brother taught me 3 chords, and I've been playing ever since. Uh, I- when I was about 14, I joined a little band, and I was playing around pubs and places like that, around Holloway Road, up and down Holloway Road, around surrounding areas. By the time I was 15, well, about 15 and a half, I used to go down to a music shop in Holloway Road called Berries. And while I was going, I was just coming out of Berries, and as I looked down the road, I noticed some people going into a shop with a load of musical equipment. So me being a cheeky little person, I decided to walk down there and into the shop and find out what the situation was. It turned out it was a place called Shenton's. It was like a leather shop, and the lady in there, Mrs. Shenton, I asked her. I said, excuse me for being nosy. I said, but what's happening? And she said to me, dear, there's a recording studio upstairs. She said, go upstairs and I told her that I was a musician. She said, go upstairs and talk to Joe, and he'll show you around the studio and everything.
Right, we're going to take a little break. Hold on. So we're going to get into how you got involved with Joe. And we won't mention the last name yet, but just a quick question before. Who was your main inspiration? So when you started playing guitar and you got taught the first 3 chords and you're listening on the radio, who was your main inspiration to make you want to play guitar?
My main inspiration to learn to play the guitar was Hank Marvin and the Shadows when I first heard Apache. And I said to my dad one day, I'm going to play that. And my dad looked at me much as to say, in your dreams. And I plonked around on the guitar and I started learning to play chords. And by the time I was about 15, I suppose, 14 actually, I had my first electric guitar, which was a Hofner Colour Armour. And I started learning to play flashy bits of lead and little tiny bits of lead solos. And by the time I was about 16, could play Apache fluently. And that's the way that started, from Hank Marvin. It's as simple as that.
Right, so we're going to get back to Joe Meat now. So obviously you were telling us the story of how you were getting introduced to Joe. Would you like to carry on with your story? Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah. So I walked into this shop and I see the lady. She said to me, "Go upstairs." I went up the stairs and knocked on the door, very very nervously. And a man opened the door and said to me, "Yes." I said to him, "Well," I said, "I'm a guitarist, singer." I said, and I asked the lady downstairs what was happening, and she told me to come up and see you. And he said, "Oh yeah, come in." And he was very nice. He showed me around his studio in number 304 Holloway Road, and I was absolutely amazed by it because of all the equipment and the size of the room that was the actual studio itself was cladded out with all sound tiles made of straw, and there's straw with holes in it, like sort of cladded straw, and they would go. It was, how could I put it? On the first wall, as I walked in, I noticed a load of curtains. It was like a big long curtain in like an orangey colour. Well, that covered the actual windows, and I didn't realise that at the time. So I'm looking around the studio. And to my right hand side was a Lowry organ. I was taken back by that. I thought, oh, wow. And all the studio equipment. There was a piano on the left hand side, front missing off it, nothing on the top. All exposed to the actual notes, so you could see all the actual hammers going up and down. Uh, didn't realise it at the time, but the reason why that was like that was because it had drawing pins on the actual notes, on the actual hammers, to make the notes sound twangy. Um, so I got into conversation, and he said to me, "Would you like to have a look around properly?" And I looked around properly, went into the control room, saw several large tape machines, one which was like a BBC type tape machine. Another was a Ferrograph Series 4, which I have one actually. I've got one of those actually. a Series 4 Heterograph from about 1957. And he had some other tape machines, but I didn't take much notice of those. There was also an echo unit on there, like a gold colour, and it was called a Klempt Echolette, which eventually he gave to me. Now, I was very, very interested, and he said to me, if you want, you can help me to sort a few bits out in the studio, and I'll teach you how to be a sound engineer eventually. So that's that part of the actual story.
Right, so obviously you're approached by Joe, and he says, you know, come join me, I can teach you the ropes. What appealed to you about Joe? Was you aware of Joe's presence in the music industry at that time, or was he someone completely new to you?
He was someone completely new to me, because I didn't realise that I didn't realise that he'd had hits like Telstar right until I actually heard it played on the radio and somebody mentioned his name on it, and that really sort of threw me. After about 3 or 4 months, he said to me he was interested in sort of making a comic record. Now, the comic record would have been the answer to a record by a lady called Twinkle. It was called Terry. He wanted to do a comic version of it, something like that she rode off into the night on her motorbike effort. So it would have been the reverse to what she was singing about her boyfriend who rode off into the night and died. Things like that, but it was going to be a comic version, which it never did happen because of Joe Meek's death in 1967. But that was on the back shelf, ready. In 1966, my brother had a band together. He was playing drums, and he called it the Rapids, and he asked me if I wanted to join. So I said, well, reluctantly I did, and I went to see Joe Meek, and I said to him, look, I said, my brother's just put a band together. Would you be interested in doing an audition? And he said yes. So we went along. He auditioned us. He recorded 4 tracks, which he put on a tape for me. The tape was sent by my brother to a person in Westcliff-on-Sea called I can't remember his name. But it was sent there, and the actual guy put the actual tape onto discs, the EMI type discs, the metal disc with the sort of shellac on them. We all had a copy each. I lost my one. My brother's one is still around, but my nephew has still got it. But it is very, very badly scratched and jumps all over the place. So he'd done his recording, and we was very, very proud of it. I took the recording into Berry's and asked them if I could play it on one of their tape machines in there. And the guy who was in there, who was one of the members of the Blue Rondos band, which was Joe Meek's, said to me, he said, we work with Joe Meek, and I found out who he was. I can't remember his name, but he was with the Blue Rondos, and he served me, and he said, look, if you want to put your tape on that machine, you can play it back. I played it back, and I was absolutely over the moon. And this guy was standing behind me, and he had very, very poor eyesight, this bloke, but he was listening. Evidently, he was a guy who done. He transferred tapes onto disc. So he's the guy who I got in touch with. He gave me his address, and he said, send the tape to this address, blah, blah, blah. So my brother sent it off by recorded delivery, and about a couple of weeks later, the disc came back, all 4 of them. Unfortunately, I don't know if my brother got the tape back, because I couldn't find it after that. So, jumping ahead a bit, 50 years later, which is now, there was a thing called the Joe Meek T-chest tapes. After Joe Meek died, he obviously had a load of equipment which was auctioned off. Now the T-chest tapes were bought by a guy to do with Joe Meek, and they were actually ended up in a place called Cherry Red Records, which are now going through the tapes with Pete Rochford and Rob, well, I can't remember his name, Rob something, Rob Bradford, is it, or something like that. Anyway, they're going through the tapes, and I was watching YouTube a couple of days ago, and they've actually got the first tape playing, not the first tape, the actual first YouTube recording of them going through the tapes. And the guy turned around and said, after looking through a couple of tapes, he said, "Look, we got one here, and it's got writing on it." And he said, "It's Chris's band's audition." And I'm hoping that is going to be my tape.
Now, you might be thinking, well, his name is Paul. But Grandad was actually called Christopher Paul Burns. He changed his name. So at the time of the recording, his name would have been Chris, and that's what would have been written on the tape. So we have a deep suspicion this could be one of the original tapes that was recorded with Grandad 50 years ago. So it's quite an interesting story. One thing I want to ask, Grandad, is when you were talking with Joe, what was his like? His personality, was he very upbeat? Or could you?
He was very, very pleasant, but he never raised his voice at me once. Even if I'd done something wrong with the band, if I made a mistake, he'd just come out, put his head around the door, and say, "Start again." A lot of people have turned around and said that he was very aggressive, and he was loud, and he was noisy, and he had a bad temper. Never saw anything like that. All the time I was with Joe Meek, and I must have been with Joe Meek about a year and a half before his death. And the funny thing is, about a week before he died, I was actually talking to him. So yeah, that's just history, I suppose.
Obviously, there's the questions of Joe Meek's death. There's a lot of questions around that. There was maybe ties to the craze as well. Obviously, he was from that era, from around that area. Is there anything that you saw that stood out for you, or was that never even mentioned of at the time?
No, nobody was mentioned like that at the time to me or around me. All I remember is going in and seeing certain bands coming up. You see bands coming up the stairs. I mean, one day I was just about to leave, and the Checkmates walked in. That's Emil Ford's old band, and there was about 7 of them, and they walked in. They were setting up drums and amps and God knows what else, and they took most of the studio floor up, because the studio itself was a very, very large double front room, which was huge. I mean, it was you get a normal front room in there about 3 times. So it was huge. I mean, if you go on YouTube, you can see the actual layout of the Joe Meek studio, how it was.
Yeah, well, we'll try and find links to that, and if I'm able to find the links, they will be in the description. So obviously you're working with Joe Meek for a year and a half. So what were your duties? Was you helping out with other bands' recordings? Was you just doing your own recordings? Or was it a bit of both?
It was just a bit of clearing up here and there, and just general help. And in return, he was showing me little bits and pieces of how things worked, and because I was very interested in recording, I was very interested in becoming a sound engineer, and just doing that kind of work, plus playing in a band. And the fact that I was a musician, he knew he could help me, and I knew he could help me, but as a musician. So there was no payments of anything. He didn't give me any money or anything like that. He did give me a couple of tapes at one time, a couple of Shamrock tapes, which I stupidly recorded over. But also he gave me, what as I said earlier, he gave me a Klempt echo unit, which I stupidly sold going back a while ago. If I'd have kept it, it'd be worth a fortune now because of his name. But there you go, that's history. And I've seen plenty of musicians and people go in there, not knowing who they were. But you know, it's like when you're a kid, you don't sort of take too much notice of things.
Yeah, you probably had a few occasions where you were seeing people that were going to be famous one day, but you wasn't aware of them at the time.
I see Hines going there a couple of times, going there and come out a couple of times with his short blonde hair.
I mean, Joe Meek was known for having the bad business mind. I remember, us talking one time. You said about the Beatles and various different bands that he had maybe turned down. Could you give us an insight into who he was connected with? And
well, he was connected with a lot of people. I mean, he recorded Lonnie Donegan. Lonnie Donegan was the first skiffle person in this country to sort of start making records, and Joe Meek actually engineered live My Old Man's a Dustman while they was playing it on stage. He actually engineered that live. He also done some work with Tom Jones, and he recorded Frankie Vaughan. He recorded Green Door by Frankie Vaughan. He's done lots of other stuff, lots of other different people. Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, the Honeycombs, the Tornadoes. The Tornadoes obviously being his biggest hit with Telstar, and the Honeycombs with Have I the Right. Also John Layton with Johnny Remember Me and Wild Wind. They are his biggest hits. Absolutely fabulous.
Well, you mentioned the Honeycombs there. We'll get into the Honeycombs a bit later because obviously, you were involved with the Honeycombs a lot later on. But we're going to move on now. So, obviously, Joe Meek has a tragic death. You're kind of left in the midst, you had someone, a mentor, someone who was teaching you. What next step did you take in the music industry?
Well,
what was your next step from there?
2 years after Joe Meek died, my family decided that they had to move. It weren't them that decided. The council decided to move them because of compulsory purchase of Comus Road. Unfortunately, I was a bit knocked when Joe died, but there weren't a lot I could do about it. I just played in my little band. I played in a band called the Lariats and another band called Mick Daly and his Northern Stars, all at the same time in the Half Moon pub, Holloway Road. On Friday, I would be playing with a country band called the Lariats. On Saturday, I'd be playing with Mick Daly and the Northern Stars. On Sunday morning, I'd be playing with another little setup, which didn't have no name. We're just filling in here and there. And on Sunday, I'd be playing back with Mick Daly and his Northern Stars again. And I'd done that for quite a while till I moved in 1969. And I had to give it up to move down to South London. After moving down to South London, for about a year I was doing nothing. And in the end of 1970, my dad saw an advert in the newspaper, guitarist singer wanted. So we traipsed down to Plumstead from Bellingham on a bus with a guitar and a little 10-watt amp. Goes to this audition and there's a drummer there and a guy singing. The guy singing, his name was called John Mayer. It's not the guitarist. It's not John Mayer, the guitarist. This guy, and he was absolutely terrible. But the drummer was absolutely superb. And the drummer his name was Gordon Summers. Actually known, his nickname was Jazz. He was interested in my playing. We got together and we blew John out because he was useless. He had two girl singers. Well, we kept them in the band with us. One was called Sue and the other one was called Margaret. I don't know what happened to them in the end. But anyway, Chaz and I decided that we needed to get another band member. So we got a guy in who we knew by the name of Peter Curtis. And not the Peter Curtis who was... This guy was a keyboard player and a bass player. He could play both. He was a superb musician. And he could sing really well. So we got together and we formed a band and we called ourselves Grey. So we got together and we was playing away around this little pubs. Anyway, we went to a pub in Holloway Road, another Holloway Road pub, called The Castle, which is right down the other end of Holloway Road near Highbury Corner. And we was in there one day when they're practicing in there. And... not practicing, playing in there, and Arthur Mullard, another famous person, was standing at the other side of the pub at the bar, and we went down for a break, and we ended up talking to him, and that was really, really good. But after that particular pub, we was getting a bit browned off with this pub because it weren't paying very well, and it was only about once a month. So anyway, I'm sitting indoors one day and drummer comes knocking around. He comes around and says, "Hey," he said, "Paul." I said, "What?" He said, "We got a gig." And I said, "Well, that's good." And he said, "Yeah, but it's 7 nights a week." I said, "You're joking." He said, "No, it's 7 nights a week." I said, "You're pulling my leg." So he said, "No, seriously, it's 7 nights a week." So I said, "Where?" He said, "Wickford." So I said, "Where's that?" So he said, near Southend. So I thought, bloody hell, that's a long drive. Anyway, it was good money. It was 7 nights a week, and we were doing well. We sounded really good, so we went along. Had an audition to the pub. They took us in. They loved us. we ended up getting another bass player, and Peter ended up playing an Hammond organ, and we were doing chart music and also heavy rock, a bit of progressive. And we were doing really, really well. I'd done that for nearly 2 years professionally. And then we left that pub and went to a place called The Cock in Palmer's Green, which we did for a couple of weeks. We didn't like that pub, so we moved on. We went to another place called The Lawn Arms, which was in Leytonstone. From there, we just disbanded after a while. That was it. Just disbanded.
Right, we're going to rewind it back because I think there's a key point actually we missed out. I just realised. So at 14 years old.
Yeah.
Right, I think you know the story that I think everyone's going to be very intrigued at this.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I just realised what you meant.
Yeah. So would you like to talk us through that whole story? I'm not going to give any indication of what it is. I'd just like you to tell it how it all came out.
One day I was hopping off school. As you do. And I was walking down Seven Sisters Road, of all the places, and I bumped into this guy, and he had long hair, long blonde hair, and he's sort of scruffy. I started talking to him, talking about music, and he said to me, "I'm in a band." He said, "We just got a band together. You interested?" So I thought, "Yeah, it might be." So I said, "Yeah, I'm interested." So he said, "Okay." He said, "I'll have a word with the guys and see what we can do. And you know, we could do another guitarist." So I said, "All right." So I forgot about that. Next day, I'm walking down and bumped into the same geezer again. I thought, "Hello, what's going on here?" Anyway, I bumped into this bloke, and he said, "Yeah." He said, "The guy said, would you like an audition?" So I said, "Yeah, that's fine." He said, I said, "What's the name of the band?" He said, "Rolling Stones." And I went home and told my dad, and my dad turned around and said, "I'm sorry, you're too young. You're not doing it."
Now, if you don't know the Rolling Stones, you obviously have been living under a stone. I mean, this for me, when I first heard this story as a young, musician who's always been listening to Grandad play, that was a massive inspiration. As we speak, I'm looking at a picture we've got of the Rolling Stones up. So, for me, that was a massive eye opener. That made me realise, what kind of role Grandad played in the music industry.
I'm going to tell you something really funny in a minute.
Well, we'll let you move on to this story. So tell me this funny story. I'd like to hear it.
When I was about 14, I had a friend, and his name was Rodney Brace. His name was. We both played guitar, and I used to go around his house, and we'd have a bit of a jam session, and he'd come round my house. And one day, we went down to Finsbury for some silly reason. We went down to Finsbury Park. Now I've got a little 10-watt amp in one hand and a guitar in the other hand, and I had a Beatle haircut. Dressed like the Beatles because I like the Beatles. I'm walking past Finsbury Park, the Astoria, and all of a sudden all these girls started chasing after us because they thought we was the Beatles. I didn't realise that the Beatles was actually on the Astoria at the time. And we're running down. I'll tell you what, it frightened the life out of me. Nearly 15-year-old kid running down the road with a guitar in one hand, amp in one hand, out of breath, just about got on the bus, got away from them. You imagine it, can't you? Really hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
Right, so we obviously spoke a bit about how you had a kind of connection to the Rolling Stones. So obviously a massive band within the industry. And we kind of went past the 7 days you're doing at the pubs. Now, we're probably getting into mid-70s, aren't we, at this point?
Yeah, mid-70s. Now, around about 1970... what was it? About 1974, I think it was. I started playing, 73, 74. I started playing in a band with my other nephew called David Munger. He was a drummer. There was a guy called Terry Parker, who is now deceased, unfortunately. Another guy, an old boy called Billy Warnham. He's also deceased. He sung. He had a fabulous voice. He sounded like Perry Como, but better. Terry Parker played rhythm guitar and sung. Dave played drums and sung. That's my nephew. I played lead guitar and sung, and we was like a harmony pop group. We done rock and roll and bits and pieces like that, all around the CIU clubs 3 nights a week. We was doing quite well, and one day I decided to leave, and then I decided not to leave, so I stayed. But I was looking around and I thought I've got to get out of this band because it's not for me. And one day I was playing in a club, and this guy come up to me and said to me, "Are you happy in this band?" And I said, "No, not really." And it turned out he was a drummer. No, his name was Johnny Geen, and he was a drummer in a band called Laser. That's Laza. Now they wanted to get rid of. They had a guitarist, and he wasn't. No disrespect to him, but he wasn't very good, and he was slowing them down. So they said to me, "Would you be interested in joining?" So I went along and I had a bit of a play, a little sort of a practice with them, and they were great. So I said yes. So I was with them from 1979 to about 1984, and we made a record which was called Double Star by Laser, which I didn't put much input into because I was really annoyed about that, but that's another story. After that, because of the situation with that, I gave up playing guitar and singing for 15 years, and I went into DJing. I went into DJing on a radio and in clubs.
Right, so obviously growing up in 50s, 60s, and kind of joining different bands, playing live music, how did that transition change? So obviously I'm aware, the viewers won't be aware, but obviously I'm aware that an ex-wife obviously played a role in you stopping to play guitar. But what made you take that leap into what appealed to you from the
You mean
the
coming
DJing
back?
scene?
You mean coming back from a DJ scene?
Going into the DJ scene. So when you first went into it, what appealed to you? Because obviously you come from a completely different era and different music.
When I was actually playing in a band, we played at a holiday camp, and I was watching a DJ down there. This is about 19.
Early 80s.
Yeah. Well, previous to that, I mean, I was doing a pub back 1974. I was doing one pub one night a week on a Monday down at Greenwich called the Bell in Haddow Street. I was doing a Monday night there. I was a Monday night DJ. Didn't get a lot of money, but it was good experience. And from that holiday camp, watching that guy, I decided I wanted to do a mobile disco, and that's how it evolved. I got all the equipment and learnt how to use it, learnt how to do mixing, and I went into the actual situation of going around pubs and playing, and eventually I got into a nightclub, and it was due to my nephew Terry, who was actually playing in the nightclub. He was playing in nightclubs. He was doing the Old Kent Road. He'd done the Thomas a Becket on a Friday and Saturday night, and he was doing other clubs here and there. And how I got into actual clubs was one night he said, "Look," he said, "I'm going on holiday." He said, "In a couple of weeks," he said, "Would you stand in for me?" And I said, "Yeah." And I stood in for him, and nobody knew any difference because we looked identical to each other. So I stood in, and it got me a foot in the door. And what a fabulous couple of weeks. Over that 2 weeks playing in the Thomas a Becket, they had bands come in. They had a stage next to where the DJ booth was. And one particular night we had a band called Hue and Cry come in from the 80s. And then another couple of weeks later we had Aztec Camera with their song Somewhere in My Heart. Now the point was, I had that record, and the guys actually come up and signed it for me. I don't know where the record is now, but I probably in my collection somewhere. They come and sign the actual case for me. So that was a blast. It was absolutely fabulous. From there, I went on to other DJing. We got a thing in the newspaper. Terry said to me, "There's a radio station down in Woolwich looking for DJs." So I said, "Okay." Previous to that, I'd been at Radio Thamesmead as a producer, which they didn't get their license, but that's beside the point. Anyway, this other radio station was run by the person who actually built Radio Thamesmead. His name was Jamal Hassan, and he lived in Lewisham. Anyway, we was in the McBean Centre, at Woolwich, where the actual radio station was, and they said, come down for an audition. Went down, took a tape, audition tape. Terry got 5 shows a week. I got 5 shows a week. I'd done that for a year, from 1988 to 1989. And then in 1989, Radio Thamesmead got the licence instead of us. We were called GCRM, Greenwich Community Radio Meridian. Absolutely fabulous equipment. I mean, the studio was absolutely beautiful. I remember Douglas Hurd came in one day and looking round. He used to be the Home Secretary, because he came down to have a look at the studio because of the licence which we was going for. And he walked in, and I was actually on the air. He walked into the studio. It's quite funny. And I turned and said in the air, oh, God help us. I said, look who's walked in the studio. It's Douglas Hurd. With our governor. But it was good days. I've also worked in other clubs here and there, and I worked in a club up to about 1990 to 1993. I worked in a club down at Woolwich, down at Waspite Road. It used to be on a corner. It used to be called Forties nightclub, and it was behind a pub off of the main road. It's now called the Victoria, I think. But this guy called Amnon actually ran it, and I was doing Friday and Saturday, 9 till 2. And it was good. It was absolutely packed every night.
So, going back to the Greenwich radio station, what kind of shows was you doing? So, was it a talk show? Was it playing music?
No, it was a music show. I was on 17 mailing lists for dance music, and I was on XL. I used to get Prodigy and stuff like that. I was hardcore. You name it, I had it. In fact, I got so many records coming through. The actual postman come up to me one day and said to me, "Why on earth do you order so many records?" And I said, "I'm not ordering them. They're coming through. They're white labels coming through from the record companies." So I was quite happy there. A few of the DJs in the radio station said to me, "How the hell did you do that?" But I mean, a lot of it was to do with the help from Terry, because Terry introduced me also to the Disco Mix Club. That's DMC, which I was a member of for a year, and I was actually getting their albums through, their actual mixes and stuff like that. And I was doing quite well. I was doing very well as a DJ. I was with my ex-wife at the time, so
so obviously talk us through the story of how you stopped playing. So obviously a lot of people are going to want to know,
I stopped playing guitar because of the band Laser, and I went into radio. Now the reason why I stopped playing guitar was because I was really annoyed over the record deal which they was offered. They was offered a record deal by Pi, 9 pence per record. We would have got 9 pence off of each record, but they would have distributed it. It was the era when the clap traps were going on. They were clapping in the back of the records.
So just to clarify, what were the clap traps?
What they do, they put a clapping track behind the record. So you're going,
right.
Yeah, that's clapping all the time. And they put a beat on it, and they mix various tunes together. And we actually done one side of the record was but a Carpenter's copy, the other side was Elvis. And they put it all together, about for 5 different songs on each one, and the record come back pressed really well. The production I could have done better myself, but that's beside the point.
Well, it's quite an interesting point you put there about the clap, because obviously what we see now with the music I listen to a lot of hip hop and music from these days. You see the clap is one of the main components in producing music.
Yeah.
So, do you remember when the clap was introduced into production of music, how it was used? Because it acts as though now it seems as kind of like a snare. It acts as something to bounce off the bass drum. Was that?
Well,
do you remember that being introduced?
It started with when they were sort of mixing records together in the early 80s. It was as simple as that. They were sort of they was coming up with new ideas, The studio we went to get it done was called King Studios in Maidstone. Now the guy in there, he was telling us that the machine we played into, we clapped into to get the actual sound, was actually owned by Jethro Tull. Which Jethro Tull was a very, very famous musician who played flute, and he'd done a song called "Living in the Past" back in the 70s, I think it was. But they loaned it off of him, so we could actually get the proper sound, and it did come out really good. The claptrap came out really, really well. Odds and ends were added in, like a snare drum here and there, like on a roll, to give different bits and pieces, different ooh-ahs and bop-bops and wop-wops, all sung in the background, all on double track. It was all worked out on a TIAC 8-track double track machine, 8-track tracking machine, a multi-tracker, with a big studio desk, and it came out really well. The actual tape was sent to France, and they actually pressed the records in France. So I think we had about 2,000 records pressed. That was when they decided that they didn't want Pi to take it on, and I was really annoyed about that, because we could have had a record, probably a record in the charts, along with all the other records that were like it, and it was really annoying. So I left the band, and I gave up in disgust. I got rid of all my equipment, and that was it. I sold up, and I went into on radio and DJing, and that was it. I stayed doing that for 15 years. And then one day I was working at this radio station, and where my ex-wife lived we lived in Mangold Way in Thamesmead, and we had like a big porchway which I divided half of it off and filled it in, and made it into like a little studio room. The point was I needed an echo unit, because I was doing jingles for the radio station. Now the echo unit, I didn't have an echo unit. I went down to this place in Belvedere called Music Mayhem, and in the window they had a Watkins Copycat, which I've still got. And I went in there and bought this Watkins Copycat, and as I came out I had a guitar in my hand as well. So I went back into playing guitar again. That's how I got back into it.
That seems to be a common thing with us musicians, isn't it? You go into a shop, you don't think you're ever going to buy anything, you see a guitar and you're like, okay, I have to have this. So it's a common theme. If you're a musician, you'll know exactly what we're talking about, because it happens to everyone. And you always seem to have the missus going, "Oh yeah, got another guitar, have you? Another one?"
No, I didn't have one at the time.
Yeah, at the time, yeah, it would have been your first one of your new collection.
Yeah.
So
this is after. This is when we sort of split up. That was it. I went into my own little flat, and then I started accumulating recording equipment, like little multi-trackers. I had a Tascam 4-track multi-tracker, which I bought for a friend of mine for £100. And then I had a couple of keyboards. One was a Yamaha, the other one was a Casio. I still got the Casio, actually.
Right, and we're going to fast forward now to present day. So obviously, me and you, we're playing in a band together.
Yeah.
And this has been one of my favourite things ever to do. You know, playing a band with my granddad is something. How did this band start? Because obviously I was very young when this band started. I wasn't. You know, I was playing guitar, but you know, not a lot, and I hadn't really got into the full gist of things. And obviously, Grandad started up a band. I started.
Well,
listening.
I didn't start it, actually. It was Tony who started.
Tony started the band, the bass player, and I remember going to watch these guys. You go to rehearsal rooms, and that is what made me fall in love with the whole idea of playing
I'll tell
music.
you how it started, shall I?
Yeah, let's go.
I was sitting indoors one day, and I was on my laptop, and I got a message come up from a friend of a lady who used to know us by the name of Sharon, and she
just quickly. Once we talk about how you got into the band, I'd like to talk about how you met Tony first, because obviously there was a lot of history before.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
This lady already knew Tony. She used to go out with him. Now Tony's our bass player. Now, she said to me, Tony's band is looking for a singer. Will you be interested? So I said, well, not really. I'm not really a singer. I'm just a guitarist. but you know, if they wanted a guitarist, I'd be interested. So she said okay, and I forgot all about it. And about a month later, I got an email come through saying, hello, this is Tony. We're me and Mick, who's a drummer. We'd like to get together with you for a practice. Are you interested? So I thought, well, that can't really hurt, can it? So we went down to a studio which was in Bromley called Escape Studios, which unfortunately isn't there. Recently closed down.
Yeah.
We went along, and after playing the first three notes, we clicked together like a jigsaw puzzle. So Mick, the drummer, who's just come back to us after being retired for a while, Mick, Tony, and I. I was singing lead and playing lead. Tony was doing a little bit of harmony and playing bass, and Mick was playing drums. And we started. This is 2013. We started. Since then, about a year later, Mick decided to hang up his drumsticks and go in retirement because he was having problems with his leg, and he was working as a landscape gardener, which is very hard work, and it was playing toll on him, so he couldn't play very well. Well, he could play very well, but he couldn't hack it. Anyway, after that, we had various drummers. I'm not going to mention their names, but we have various bad ones, a couple of good ones. The last drummer we had, he was absolutely fabulous. His name was Simon Cole. Yeah, absolutely fabulous drummer.
Brilliant man as well.
Lovely man. Unfortunately, illness has taken toll on him, and our original drummer Mick has now come back to us. Unfortunately, with this blooming COVID rubbish, the gigs have gone out the window for the time being.
Well, obviously, you know, I've been in the band for about a year and a half now, and I've had the opportunity to play with Mick on a jam night. We played a couple of songs.
Fabulous, mate.
Fabulous, and
Yeah.
it was great. And I think that was one of my regrets, you know, with Mick leaving. It was being able to never play as a band together. And obviously Mick is a great man, you know. He's been great to us. And when I first ever met him, he's always been brilliant with me. He always had the attitude of, Alex, mate, come on, come and
very
join
polite,
in.
very polite,
very
man.
polite, and he always encouraged me to kind of get involved. So it's very interesting to see now that obviously I'm grown up, a lot more different, and I'm playing more, to see how this is going to play out. You know, I think it's really gonna.
I think it's brilliant.
I think it's
absolutely
really,
brilliant.
Yeah. So we're going to take it back now. What would you say was your best chance? So what do you think was the best opportunity that you had that maybe didn't work out as planned?
Oh, I've had plenty of them. Well, I'll tell you about the first one. Back in the 60s, as I said, I was playing with a band called Mick Daly and the Northern Stars. Now Mick said to me one night, "Come out, we go to a pub, listen to this pub, see if we can get in there." So I said, "All right." So we went down to Highbury to a pub called the Mildmay Tavern, and there's a band playing in there, and Mick asked if I could get up and do a couple of numbers. So I got up and done a couple of songs, and played the guitar, got away with it, you know. And as I come off the stage, this guy come up to me. He's a thin, tall guy. Come up to me and said to me, "Oh," he said, "I think you're really great." He said, "Would you be interested in going in a film?" And I said, "What?" He said, "You interested in being part of a film?" So I said, "Well, yeah, it depends what it's doing." So he said, "Well, all you'd have to do is stand on the stage and play guitar in the background and sing." I said, "I can do that." So as I was talking to this guy, Mick come up and turned around, because he was older than me. He was looking after me. I mean, I remember I was only 16, 15, 16 at the time, something like that. And he come up to this bloke and said, "Look, sod off, mate, go away." This guy was offering me a part in a film which was to do with Roger Moore, and I was really gutted, you know. So that was my first one. The second one was I was in a band called the Samples. Now we'd done a New Faces audition. On the stage next to us was Mike Oldfield, who got through, obviously.
Wow.
We was about a 7-piece at that night, we normally was a 4 or 5 piece, but this night the 2 other brothers came along. They were singers, and the old man came along. They decided, instead of doing a decent song, they decided to start singing the White Cliffs of Dover. What a prats! Excuse my language. So we done this audition. Obviously we failed, but what a fabulous idea! We was in this hotel, a massive, great big hotel, and in the actual audience you could see people like Glenda Jackson, people like that. I mean, all the famous people in this audience were sitting there glaring at us. Yeah. Oh, I tell you, I could have called up and died.
So at that time, when obviously you got the audition, and you're usually a 4 to 5 piece, and obviously I'm guessing you've been doing a lot of practice with this band. Suddenly, when you got 2 other people coming in,
they used to come down occasionally and sing with us. That, at the gigs, they didn't get paid. There were 2 brothers who were nephews to Bill Warnham, who was the actual singer. I was telling you, the Perry Como guy. I think his nephews. One of them was a millionaire actually, and his brother worked for him, and he gave his brother one year a brand spanking new Daimler Jag. As a bonus.
Yeah, just a nice little bonus.
Yeah, nice little bonus.
Nice new Jag. Right, so we're going to get to the end of the podcast now, because we are running out a bit of time. But I wanted to ask you, and obviously I'm thinking of doing a second, podcast with you, because I think there's so many stories that you still haven't told, and there's so much. So I'd like to get loads, but we're obviously going to get on to the end today. So just quickly, what would you say is your most memorable moment working in music? Obviously you've had a lot of opportunities, you've worked with loads of different people.
Memorable
what
moment
for you sticks out?
Oh God, my most memorable moment, believe it or not, was when I first started. I was 13 years old, and I was in a little band, and we was down Holloway Road again in a cinema called the Gormont. It's now called the Odeon. And I was in a little band, little 3-piece band. My mate Rodney, me, and a guy on drums called David Townsend. We was playing to 800 kids on a Saturday morning pictures. Wow. 800 kids, and we'd done Glad All Over, which was just come out. Yeah, we played that, and the most hilarious thing, which I'll never forget, was on the bass drum. You used to go boom boom, Glad All Over. So Dave, who's playing boom boom, at the very last boom boom, his bass pedal beater came loose and it flew up in the air and he caught it. And I was in stitches, and everybody went "Ray!" Literally hilarious. How it happened, I don't know, but it just shot up in the air. It couldn't have been done up properly. It was really funny. Yeah, so that was that.
And I can vouch for them kind of moments when you're playing live and you get something that comes along and suddenly it's like the whole crowd's laughing. It was never meant to happen, but it works out fine. So we're all going to give it...
Can I tell you just one more little thing?
Of course.
When I was with Hush, which was the 7 nights a week band one, when we went to Palmer's Green, this is really funny. This was funny for me. I used to stand on stage. When I used to stand on stage, we was getting to a lead solo, I used to close my eyes. And I'm playing away one night, and it's our first night in this pub. And I'm playing away, and I'm doing this solo, and all of a sudden the band behind me started falling apart. They was missing notes, dropping beats, and God knows what else all over the place. And I could hear people laughing. And I'm really getting into this solo. I was going to hear him laughing, so I opened my eyes, and to my amazement, there was this young little bird standing right in front of me, dancing with literally nothing on. and as I opened my eyes, my mouth dropped, my chin dropped down. Everybody thought it was hilarious. That's one thing I'll never forget. It was really funny.
And that would never happen nowadays.
It was comical.
You'd be arrested, put away, into jail, everything. You wouldn't be seeing the light of day. But I want to say thank you, Grandad.
No problem.
I definitely want to do a second one. I feel this has been really interesting, and I think everyone's going to enjoy it, listening to it. So yeah, guys, thank you for listening. Remember, we're going to put all the links in the description below. Remember, guys, I want you to comment any questions that you may have for Granad, because obviously we're going to be doing the second one. So if you have any questions, it'd be a good chance to send them over, and we can put them to Grandad. But I just want to say a big thank you for listening. We can't thank you enough, and we'll see you next time.